ba 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 ba.
Hi, Maestro.
Good afternoon. Now it's afternoon.
Yeah, it's afternoon.
How's it going? I don't know
Going
what
okay?
I don't know what I'm going to do after our sessions are over.
Oh, they don't have to be
It's
over.
like it's like free psychology music discussion.
I guess it is, I should start charging people.
Be awesome. I'll interview you. My rate's $100 an hour.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's cool, huh? Like this is our 8th meeting, I think,
Is
to
it that
talk.
many? That sounds
I,
about right.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, there is a lot to talk about. And I feel like, I feel like we could potentially go over everything again.
I know, right?
Because,
Because
but I guess that's,
there's a big, we're both getting a bigger picture actually of each other too, right?
yeah, it's
And
that, but then,
combining, there's like I don't know, like the mosses, the mushrooms are now they're, and then they're,
yeah. Yeah, I think it's because like at first we sort of have to kind of like discuss the surface level somehow, right? Just kind of like get the timeline sorted a little bit, and then once you have like these little things that kind of like trigger memories and trigger memories of feelings, right? And then you can go further and you can go deeper, and then I guess there's like, and that's what I meant, like there is potentially many more angles from which we could look at things,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course.
It's true.
Yeah,
Especially when you think about like, how long have you been playing music?
basically forever.
I
But
know, but like how many years?
well, if I don't count the childhood part, then it's only 28 years. But
But
with the childhood, it's 45 years or something,
yeah,
I guess.
yeah, me, I'm like 56, 55. So
Yeah.
that's 100 years
Yes.
between us, right?
Yeah, it is awesome. Yeah, I don't know. Like there's also so much more that what I find so interesting is doing these having these conversations like with you, but also with others. um, I hardly ever get to say the things that I always say, if that makes any sense.
No,
Like it's, well, let me explain that. But I think it's like that. Even what I would just call like the surface level of information, even that in my is not really covered yet. So that like the people that I talk to hardly ever trigger things in me
hmm,
that go deeper than the things that I still need to say,
right, right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I think that you know continued conversation between people is very valuable, because you do, if you allow it, eventually you get to that point where, well, what was this metaphor that you had for like the remember when you were saying about the touch technique? You had the container and you fill it until it breaks,
Right.
and it's a little bit like that,
Broken. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. And then, yeah, of course, there seems to always be another layer, you know,
Yeah,
to go.
yes. Yeah, I spoke to a couple people this week for for the podcast, for the series, who are music teachers, or like the one guy is actually a mathematics teacher. So, and I asked them both, like, how has your teaching changed over the years? How has like your personal skill as a teacher sort of like adjusted to the over the years? And it was interesting because I guess that just like any other profession, also teaching you can do it in an artful way, you can do it in sort of like a mainstream way, you can do it as a job, you can do it as somebody who's deeply passionate about it. There's like all these different aspects. And Frédéric, the French guitarist, he said to me that at some point he stopped teaching children because, and this I found that fascinating, because he said that children usually don't choose for themselves if they want to be there. It's the parents that choose. And I found that very interesting, because then you like, the question is, what is the alternative? So if parents do not send their kids to the dojo or to piano lessons, or like, would they really do that themselves? Would they say, I want to go there? Or
not if it's around. If it's just around, if people are playing music, or you have a drum circle every week, or then they just kind of start doing it, right? Not that that's a choice either.
No.
But it just becomes part of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that it probably I don't know how to think about it exactly, because it's so hard for me to remember, but there's probably an age where you do start to have initiative, except it would be cool to be playing music before that, or at least playing, like here's a kazoo, here's a dump truck, here's a sandbox, and here's a piano. Just fuck around, before you're like, I want to learn this.
Yeah, but I think that play is learning.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But
as opposed to like, I want to do this, so find me a teacher and take me to lessons, and there's like a I don't know, that's a bigger deal for a kid. It's hard for me to imagine a 7-year-old coming to their parents with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I did, but it was because I bumped into it and I saw other people doing it, and I wanted to do what they were doing. Yeah. So this guy felt like he might even be going against the kids' natural initiative.
Yeah, and he kind of like mentioned one example where a girl actually kind of like started crying, and she said to him that she'd rather, I can't remember now what he said, but do something else. And then he called her father, and the father was kind of like not happy initially, but then Frederic met the guy after a few weeks, and then the father kind of like said thank you, and she's very happy now what she's doing. And like, so it's I guess it's about reading. It's about reading and understanding what the kids, the signs that the kids send out to tell you that they enjoy it or not. And this is something that I don't have any experience yet.
I was going to say, you've got to have experience to learn to read that, so you're not just thinking that you see something that you don't actually see, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be interesting with my daughter, to kind of like to learn to read how she communicates, and then what it means, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Huh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, when it's so funny, like whenever I say anything that kind of like just comes out of my, it can't help but apply to myself, or to think about what was it like for me. And
exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's where teachers go. Well, that's where we all go off course, but that's where teachers and parents like go off course, because whatever happened to you, or forget even how it was for you, how you think about it now doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on around you. Right? It's just your story that you're bringing to whatever's happening. So
You
yeah.
know, and I have to say, like, I have a hard time understanding or telling apart the emotions I had. Like, maybe I do remember a certain emotion going to record a class or something, right? Like,
Right.
but I've have a hard time understanding if it's because of having to learn the recorder, or if it was like some sort of social phobia I already had, or
Exactly. Or something
like,
weird with the teacher was going on that.
yeah, like, but at least there were potentially so many different reasons why. And this is sort of like interesting anyway, that like we quite often attribute emotional states to the wrong trigger.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I guess as a child, it must be super hard to kind of like understand, like, why is my heart beating so fast,
You know,
right?
also for the thing, this sounds kind of weird, but for me, if some it and it was worse when I was a kid, although I still have situations like it where if something smells wrong to me, it wrecks everything. And when I was a
Mhm,
kid, like if the room smelt weird to me,
mhm,
everything that happened in that place was unpleasant and I didn't
mhm,
want to be there, you know. So it could have been
mhm,
like my first piano teacher, like if her breath smelled weird or she wore weird perfume. I
mhm,
mean, I don't want to say I wouldn't be a musician now, but I would have just, it would have just colored and triggered all that shit, you know?
mhm,
And there's
mhm,
still smells that I come across now, like, oh man, that takes me back, sometimes in a good way, to the rose potpourri in my grandmother's bathroom where my grandfather used to smoke, and
mhm.
bathroom smell and smoke, cigarette smoke, and rose. And I just like, oh, I got to get out of here. I just got to get out of here. So who knows what, man, being a kid, I tell you what, that's actually the one thing that terrifies me. It's not about being a kid, it's about being an adolescent. The main thing that terrifies me about um, the idea of reincarnation was that it would be that I'd have to go through adolescence again. I would do anything to avoid that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I really don't have much of an opinion uh, of that when it comes to my past. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's I think I mentioned it when we talked about me there, but like I really do maybe remember 1% of my like age 10 to 18 or something,
Mm, mm,
if at all. Like everything is sort of like just a few snapshots, like maybe
mm,
less than 10 images
mm.
that sort of come back. If I, like, and especially school is like completely erased.
It's just a blank.
It's just a blank. I mean, I remember like the place, yeah, some, the I remember the building, and but nothing about um the teachers or the classes or anything. It's just totally blank.
I wonder if that will, it'd be interesting to see if any of that comes back, either as you get older or when your daughter grows up.
It will be interesting. I think I like my theory is that I was just utterly bored. I really think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because like one thing that I do remember, because well, okay, so this is I'm not sure, but I think that I never did my homework,
Mm, mm.
which sort of like, maybe means I was extremely bored, and I could just talk myself out of things, well, or I don't know.
Right. Right. Right.
or people, or the teachers didn't care for me at all, and they just let me do whatever I wanted. Or
Right. Right. Hmm. Well, at least we're past that now.
that's the question. You know, sometimes I wonder how much will I remember about this time? Like, how much do I really remember about the last 10 years of my life? At least for me, it's sort of like a theme. Like, I believe that mostly I feel like I'm in a trance.
Mm.
Well, asleep, kind of asleep, but then on some levels, like not asleep,
Mm.
but on like I would say definitely different from other people that I know. There's like my friend Bernard like said to me the other day again, like, Marcus, you're just so great at forgetting all the things that don't matter.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And he meant that as a compliment, and he was kind of jealous even.
Mm.
Right,
Mm.
because he said his head is full of these things that like he remembers that kind of like distract him. And
Some people are like that, and I always feel like I don't always feel, but sometimes it feels like that's a little bit of a. I mean, I'm not saying this about him, but sometimes it feels like that's a crutch to. Um, I don't know, just keep track of what's certain. You know, especially being musicians, there's so much uncertainty, not just in life, but in the process of being a musician. You really, at least the kind of players we are, that you live in such uncertainty uh, all the time that keeping track of those irrelevant things somehow makes it safer or something.
oh, that's, yeah. And so maybe that's a strategy I should adopt, right? To feel a little better.
You know what I like to do every once in a while, and your comment makes me think about it. I should play around with it a little bit more. But I just play around with it sometimes, and I can only hold it for a little bit, a very short amount of time. Is to imagine um, you're doing something, but when you're doing something, not uh, doing it as you're doing it now, but doing it as a memory in 10 or 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of weird. It's kind of it kind of almost feels like you're like intentionally making it a memory, and it kind of sticks almost like some of the times I've done that. It kind of like you're outside of all of this, and you're like making a memory for 15 years from now, or looking at it from then. It's a
And
strange.
does that work for you? I mean, does that really, do you
I can't.
remembering
It, I
that you
it,
made
it's
the memory?
I can't say that I've done it enough to. I haven't made. I haven't gone back after 10 years and checked it,
Mm-hmm.
because it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been like that. But it's a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting, just kind of a little playful experiment to it in a weird way. It feels like, man, we are on a strange topic. In a weird way, it's like you're more present to it and not at the same time. It's like it's just as simple as looking at, let's say we're going to do this performance, and I don't think I could sustain. I'm sure I couldn't sustain it for a whole performance, but I'm going to play this piece of music, looking at it from 15 years from now as I do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
a fun little thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's something really cool in there that I
Yes, yes.
covered. But
And like it obviously reminds me of a déjà vu, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
sort of like a déjà vu, like you can sort of like maybe decide, okay, this moment here, this will be something that I will have seen
right.
in a way, like.
Exactly. 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 Well, and that's that thing about, there's a couple of, I mean, there's a couple of different ways to look at, how do I think about this? Like you're dreaming and the alarm goes off, and this is not abstract. This has happened to me at least several times. The alarm goes off, but the alarm figures into the dream that you're having, but your actual alarm goes off, right? And you wake up. But the alarm figures into the dream, but it figures into the dream in a way that it's present in the dream before the alarm actually goes off. So like there's this impending alarm going off in the dream, and then it does something. It's not just that you're asleep, but it means something else, right? And you could look at it like, well, is that like, are you time transporting or whatnot? Or maybe the alarm goes off and your dream reconstructs itself afterwards to make the alarm fit into a story. You know what I mean? Like you actually make the story after the alarm goes off, but it feels to you that it actually began 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, or it could be simply the phase of waking up, so that the alarm may already be there before you become conscious, and just it happens really quick, and sort of like, because you don't know what the time scale is of your dream. You know, maybe you dream a day,
half a second.
Yes,
but you dreamed a whole day, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, like you've met Renee, right? My ex-wife.
Yeah.
And there was this amazing thing about her, like when she fell asleep or when she was asleep already, and there was like a noise in the house, like a beam making a noise or something like that, just like a or whatever. She would physically react before I could hear the sound. It was amazing. It was incredible. Like, so she was doing this, and then I heard the sound.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost, I mean, one way of looking at that is that your system took in the information of the sound, but you didn't get to access to it until a little bit later.
Yeah, and because she was asleep, it went directly into her system and made her twitch.
Right.
I think that is the explanation, but I swear that, you know, she was twitching before I was hearing the sound.
Right. You know, and all of this is so relevant to playing music. It really is. This whole thing about time and perception, and I mean, it makes me wish that I could experience more music not as a musician, because it's very hard to not hear how things are put together, you know, and have such a detailed hearing and being able to track things in time that it'd be so cool to be able to turn that off. Sometimes I can turn it off, but not at all like a, you know, not at all like a really, for me, almost it feels like the best audience, in fact, is somebody who practices an art form, but it's not music. You know, like they're super attuned and aware, but not in the technical aspects of how to do it. Yeah.
And that's kind of rare, because what happens is that you can't help but sort of get drawn into acquiring this insight, let's say, that's almost becoming something that is sort of like a side effect of, like you said, that to be attuned to something, right? And like what happens there's like, it seems as if it's kind of like a bane somehow to kind of like be attuned, because like sometimes you need to be able to just kind of like take a step back, but not just take a step back in the sense of having the bigger picture, but actually like completely losing all judgment, let's say,
Exactly.
ideally.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the biggest key. And it's so hard as musicians, and it's probably impossible for most musicians unless you practice it, I think,
Yeah,
to
you know
really,
that
without
the,
judgment.
the interesting thing is that that was maybe one of the, in my education as a psychologist, that was a big thing, to learn to dissociate. And I did this, I practiced this like almost every day for a year, at least a year, with all sorts of techniques, like, you know, like for example, like you would sort, you know, you would kind of like bring up that emotion inside of you, and you would when it's really strong, you would kind of like step on a, just like a sheet of paper that you put on the floor, which with anger written on it or whatever, like any, and you would step on it, and you would just then learn to just kind of leave that emotion there and actually physically take a step back or two, and
Mm.
then from your eyes, and like you imagine that part, the anger, like to be left there, for example, right? And it kind of works. It's really amazing. Like, you,
So it's gone outside of you. You're outside of
yes,
the thing instead
yes,
of you
yes,
being the thing.
yes. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, that doesn't work right away. You really have to practice this.
Hold on, let me just
And
try real quick.
yeah, and but then when you get good at it, you can just do it. Like,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
happens sort of like automatically, and you know, I sometimes even don't notice it, how much I can kind of like remove myself from my emotions.
Mm.
But what happens is that sort of like the digital judgment, let's say, the thoughts that work without emotions, those still work, and those still judge, funnily
Mm.
enough.
Yeah.
So it, and that's why um, then you practice more, and you take another step back. So even you take a step out of that person that has stepped back already. And there's like this amazing metaphor about the how do you call the guy who shows the films in the movie theater? Like
The projector.
yeah. So it's the metaphor of that guy,
Projection.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, projection is probably so like at first you're kind of like, you are the guy on the screen. Then you step out of the screen and you sit in the movie theater, and
Mhm.
then you step out of that guy and you become the projectionist, and you can sort of like build this metaphor like larger and larger, and that way like dissociate yourself more and more from, and this is actually a technique that's used for treating phobias.
Mm.
And so you kind of like learn, or in that process, in this format, you learn to dissociate yourself, and then from that dissociated perspective, you sort of watch the movie on the screen, and you
Mm.
see yourself and you experience it, but you're dissociated. So then you, for example, like the movie on that screen is Trey and the Spider, that's called,
Mm.
right? And
I just found a spider's nest with 200 baby spiders this morning.
yeah, that's the film, right? But yeah, then you kind of like, you watch it, and then there are like these amazing techniques that I can also talk about if you want, that allow you to kind of like relive that old experience, but you can kind of like replace the emotions with something new.
Now, you mean now, later.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, to me, I feel like that's probably, it could be the most valuable key for us, because it's not just enough to experience something. You have to figure out some way to digest it, right? Like to
Hmm.
eat the experience and digest it, and then it's really with you, and probably deeper within you. And um, I think of that often with musical performances, and looking back on performances, and the really strong ones, there's still stuff to eat there, right? Or and even eating it's not enough. You have to digest it. You have to work with it, so that it becomes part of your own cells, right? Otherwise, it's just it experience is awesome. We've all had awesome experiences, but it's not really enough. It's not really enough, isn't it? Which is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, exactly. It's yeah, yeah. A very, very good point. It's thinking about recent experiences that I've had where it's really, in a way, the experience sort of like creates, usually, or should probably create challenges. Like you challenge your system, or you challenge your understanding, you challenge your opinions or whatever, by making, you have a valuable experience. And yes, like you could say, okay, that always kind of like totally fits in with what I expected anyway, and then it's probably not necessary to digest it. But if there's just something that's just a little bit off of what you would have expected, or what you experience as enjoyable, let's say, right? And so like if any buttons get pushed, then these buttons may trigger a whole world that needs to be digested, as you say.
Yeah, yeah. And don't you think, I mean, maybe you're different than me. Maybe everybody's different than me. I don't know. Or maybe everybody's the same. But as we're talking about this, it makes me feel like, or it kind of reminds me, and I might say this like with a tiny bit of reservation, but I think I could say it wholly, that kind of my interest in music has always been looking for some kind of extraordinary experience.
Yeah.
You know,
Same for me, but
and
it's definitely not the same for everybody.
yeah, yeah, and those extraordinary experiences are what's the way to say it? They're like they're surrounded by all these ordinary experiences, like 1,000 to 1, or something like that. But
a million to one.
A million to 1. But the judgment thing is, the judgment thing is something that we can work with, and it's the last thing you want to do is play to somebody, or even like play a recording for someone whose judgment is what rules. For me at least, to have that, and maybe as professionals we kind of have a sense of that when we're doing that. Like the simplest. The course level is, oh, I would never play a bass part like that. Or that's kind of what I do when I'm driving in the car and I'm listening to pop radio. Oh, that's a great mix. Oh, that bridge. Fuck, why did they do that? Or like, what? I would do, it's kind of the way we're almost trained to become musicians when you're younger, is to listen to other stuff and decide for ourselves what we would have done instead. And you're not actually hearing any music at all. You're just hearing your own judgment.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But like the problem really is when people ask you for, like, what do you think about my song or something?
Yeah.
Dude, it's like the worst for me, because like usually when people ask me, I like them, so I take them seriously, and if they, it's just like, I had to learn about, like, when people, Americans ask me, how are you doing? That it's just a greeting,
They don't mean it.
Yes, it's a greeting, right? So,
yeah.
And it's a little bit like that, like if people ask me, what do you think about the song? I mean, like, and I say, okay, which hat do you want me to put on? Like,
right.
Like if you want my opinion, like, it's nice, but it's very badly produced, very bad mix, or like, and I wouldn't say it that way. I would just actually kind of like name what is wrong with it, but still, it's kind of like difficult, because like in a way, I'm much too serious a guy to lie to somebody. I just don't like that.
Yeah. I've adopted, well, I kind of adopted my own strategy with that, with my coaching. And interesting, this guy who kind of coined the term creative coach that I've done some work with, he meets with people, writers and painters, and he's very, very successful, and has been written 20 something books. And his name's Eric Maisel. And he has a policy that he meets with people very short, like 30 minutes once a month or something. He doesn't, and he never, ever looks at their work. It's all about the process. And for me, that just doesn't work. That doesn't work. But I found my way, and this is where I kind of came up with, at least for me, the conflict between, at least how I say it, between teaching and coaching, is that it's probably similar for you, although you probably have a different strategy. I'm an artist, so I make stuff, and I have my own artistic line of what interests me and where I'm going. And generally, that means I can't really like anything that anyone does because I'm always looking at the world in terms of where I'm going, right? So in a way, if you play me your stuff, I can only hear it in terms of how it fits with my direction. So it's really not, anything that I say is not useful at all from that perspective. So what I've adopted, kind of a medium between that extreme and then Eric's version of I want to coach your process and not see the work at all. I just find the first thing I do if somebody wants to know, I mean, people don't usually ask me what sometimes they do, but certainly in coaching sessions, I like to look at the work for a reason I'll tell you in a second. But the way it works for me is to just find out what their aims were and just listen through that and not hear it through my thing. Or sometimes I'll be like, okay, look, I'm going to tell you what I hear it like this. And this is why, because I like this kind of thing when rhythm does this kind of thing, and you're doing this other kind of thing. So if it were me, I would make a different choice. And this is the choice I would make. But let's talk about why what your thing is. That's the thing that's helped me. And so like somebody wanting me to hear their stuff and say whether, if I like it or not, it's, if you're really asking, you don't even need to ask because I don't like anything in a certain way. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you really ask, if you really ask from my most personalist thing, and unless I'm somehow exceptionally moved, and if I'm not sexually moved, if I'm especially moved, then there's really nothing to say. Yeah, I'm moved, so that's the end of the story. But I like to listen to people's stuff because in a coaching session, because I'm going inside their thing, and I want to see. To me, the most, and this is just personal interest, it's fascinating when people have an aim and then what the realization of it is and what that discrepancy or success or, but I like it too, because I like to look at the aim combined with the realization and then look past that to the possibilities. So sometimes that, but also I like to just hear what there's like what the person's aim is, right? But then once you've made a little bit of a piece, it has its own aims. So I kind of like to advocate for the piece. But yeah, do you like this? Stuff. Just be polite, or be so rude that no one will ask you anymore. Because really, they need to know everything that we just said in order to get something useful, unless they're just looking for validation from somebody they respect, which is, we might overlook that can be really valuable.
Potential other perspective is to just think about what would you have liked, or if you were asking, like what kind of feedback would you really want?
Yeah.
And And that is sort of like maybe like the most important to me, so that I, like, as you say, like we can make many assumptions about other people, right? And then we try to adjust our behavior to that. But that is always, like, so that's why referencing kind of like your own perspective is sort of helpful, I think. So that means, like, if somebody asks me for feedback, I would assume, okay, this person actually wants it, because I would want feedback.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then like, it's sort of like that way I'm taking responsibility somehow for how I respond, because like it's I don't give that responsibility to the person that asks somehow, right? It's like I make that choice to still using my words carefully and stuff. It's obvious, but I remember when I was about maybe 20 years old, that was the time when I had contact with lots of with older men, like experienced musicians and just experienced artists who were like 20, 30. Like, even there was one guy who was like almost 50 years older than I, like, and so I was really curious. I always kept, like a young child, I kept asking them questions, like, because I had this idea that, as somebody
About their
who's
work, or about their work, or about your
about question about their work, but also about
yeah.
questions that I had about the world or about life, right?
Mm.
And I still remember that some people even seemed like they didn't even want to share uh, this information that I assumed they must have, having lived like 30 years longer than I have, right? But they didn't share it. So it was kind of interesting, because I'm only starting to learn that now at almost 50 years old, that sometimes you simply, you kind of like, what you can, and what you can share with people, and what you can't or shouldn't, simply because that sharing some words doesn't help. If you know that this person will have to go through the experience of, it's just like, and I keep saying this, just like reading the book about stick playing, right? It's
Yeah.
nothing. It gives you nothing, right? You have to actually play it. You have to do it, and that's why sometimes some questions, they don't really even make sense. And that is sort of like what these aspects I'm trying to navigate when.
Is it possible also that and I totally believe you. I just wonder if there's also an element of how would I say it? 25 years ago, and you're in Europe. Is it possible that there was still a little bit of that old world? Like craftsmanship it was kind of a secret, that there wasn't the sense of, you want to learn something, you go online and you can tutorial the shit out of whatever it is. And here's all the secrets and go for it. Do you think there was any of that, or it was just?
It's a very interesting thought. I would say in these cases that I have in mind, no, but
No. Yeah.
But generally, I think maybe yes. But
like, I worked hard to find out this shit. I'm not just going to give it to you. Not as overt as that, but just kind of built into the system that, you go to Juilliard and you go to the Paris Conservatory, and if you're talented enough and you work hard enough, we'll give you a teacher who will show you a couple of pretty badass shit things.
As a matter of fact, like some of my older friends are pretty jealous for me having had a career in music that they didn't have. And I feel sorry, dude. I feel sorry. Like but it's not my fault that you didn't have, like it's interesting. But maybe it's yeah, I should think about that long and hard to see if there's any if I
I mean,
asked any of those people.
it maybe not, but it was definitely a different world. I mean, I think we're on the edge of that transition, and I definitely a little bit older enough, but certainly let's say Robert and Tony's age when they were younger. It was. I mean, young musicians used to be treated like shit in the old days.
Yeah,
Young jazz musicians, they would be fucked with. The tradition, and I was never there, but apparently, like the session world in LA or even Nashville. I remember somebody telling a story about Marvin Hamlisch. You know who he is? Kind of a Burt Bacharach kind of a guy, like an entertainer, talented guy. But I heard a story about him doing a session in LA or Nashville, and he was the leader or the songwriter or whatever, and there were all these musicians, like big, top level players doing the session. And this guy who was telling the story, I can't remember who it was. He was young and new, and it was like his first big session. And the leader, Marvin or whoever it was, fucked up one of the takes, and everybody looked at this young guy, and it's like, you're the youngest guy, so you got to take the fall. And the gig was basically, you have to say, I fucked up the take. You didn't overdub. There was like 20 musicians, and if somebody fucked it up, you had to do the take again. So it was his job to say, I fucked up, let's do it again. And then he kind of had to take the rap for that, but basically he was covering for the top guy. That's that I didn't have to live through that world. You didn't have to live through that, did you?
Oh, but did you have some of that in Crimson?
It's funny you say that. No. But the thing with Crimson was, and this is a little bit personal, but Robert had a way of somehow, and maybe this is just my thing, but I don't know. Somehow, if something was going wrong on stage, you had a sense of that it was always your fault. And I know Adrian used to have that thing as well, but sometimes it was Robert's fault. But you still felt like you had done something wrong. And then eventually I got over that. Like, he's just keeping a super straight face. Mm-hmm. And, we all got lost from time to time. But yeah, I can remember not having to take a fall all like that, but just that sense of like, oh shit, am I lost? Am I in the wrong? And it's like, no, it's not me. It's one of the other guys.
And sometimes you just don't know.
No,
you just don't know.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter at all. Yeah. So but how did we? I'm sure Tony has stories about doing sessions in New York in the old days,
and Buddy Rich stories and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, like this whole idea of sharing knowledge and also sharing the ineffable knowledge.
Yeah. And actually, I'm thinking now what the secret part is kind of like, or what it used to be. It doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels like nobody needs to hide anything from anyone. We'll just show it, and it's kind of like you're, like you were saying, you're so identified with what knowledge you've acquired or have that to share it will diminish it for you, or you're going to lose your advantage. Like the thing, you remember the story about Eddie Van Halen the manager told him before they, like, I don't even know if they had recorded the first record yet, or they were in the process and they were still doing shows in LA. He had Eddie, maybe they were both in collusion, I don't know. He had him do like his eruption solo facing away from the audience so nobody could steal it before they could make a big splash. You know, there's a little bit of that, like I'm so identified with my thing. Of course, now it just seems ridiculous because it's just a technique, you know, it's just another technique. And now anybody can do it, and you know, it's no big deal. But like this idea, like I have to have an edge, this kind of we're in this perpetual place of desperation where I have to have some kind of an edge. So I'm not going to share what I know. That just doesn't feel like it exists anymore to me.
You know, the funny thing is that when it comes to the touch guitar, or the touch technique, right? I think that I don't think that I ever felt that anything I was doing was secret, right? But also, it was just like, you know, there weren't people around who were asking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why, and yeah, we talked about that before, you know, like this whole idea to actually put it in a book form, this knowledge, is sort of absurd to me, because it's much more of a how do you say, like a oral tradition.
Oral tradition.
Right. Yeah, an oral tradition. And that I think it seemed to I think it's true still, that you know, it just doesn't make sense to write it down. If it's written down, you don't really get the air of the discovery of, and why it's important to discover, why you need to. It's not just, in a way, it's not just doing it, it's also understanding why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And and so that's why sometimes I kind of like had this feeling that it's some sort of secret. Now, I didn't have the feeling that it was, but just this thought, you know, that there's something about it that sort of is not, because people don't look for it, it kind of remains in that box.
Mm-hmm.
It remains kind of like hidden. And so that's why this experiment with putting my lessons online, and Sean, you know, like making his video essays, it's sort of like super interesting, because I'm wondering if this will do anything.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, and you know, I sent you that Instagram thing the other day. I don't know if you saw that yet. That it does disturb me to a pretty high degree. Not that much. I mean, people do whatever they want to do, but when I see so many great musicians tapping so badly, it just seems so sad to me. Like it wouldn't take you that long to be fucking like take it fivefold to what you have. And you know, that's fine. We'll do it, and they won't. That's fine. And they have their pick, and they have their Chet Atkins finger picking and all that. And but it's actually the most disturbing thing for me is when I see somebody presenting how to do it and it's so bad. That's what I find. And that must just torture you. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, not in terms of giving you credit at all. Just don't present. You haven't thought it through. You just haven't thought it through.
But you know, I think it doesn't. You know, it doesn't. This is interesting. Like, it doesn't torture me. It only tortures me thinking about the poor people who kind of like pick that up.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Who kind of pick up that kind of superficiality, but which it really is, like literally, if you see people like tapping like this on a guitar, and you know that it does sound shit. It really sounds shit. There is no way around it. It's just the way that they produce those tracks. They actually write the pieces, or the parts are written so that the shit is covered up.
Yeah.
So that's what's hurting me. Like, so so this is not a musical expression. It's like, it's certain ways to move your fingers that while it sounds shit, also help you cover up that it sounds shit. And that's really what it is. It's not music. But tell that to a young person who's kind of like maybe skeptical about the knowledge of older folks.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
and the cool thing is that like some of the people that work with me, they do understand this, and they sort of like kind of they are grateful that they found somebody who kind of like has a different opinion, let's say, or a
Yeah, I
different
mean,
experience.
it wouldn't take very long, just a couple of days really to get just the
Yes.
concept of efficiency alone. If you just look at that, you see a lot of people teaching tapping and like, look at what the fuck are your fingers doing? It's like a giant spider all over the place. It's not efficient.
Yeah.
Why be
Yeah, it's not
efficient?
efficient.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like with these like I said, with the lessons with Sean and just putting it out there. I really do believe it will have an effect, but I
Yeah.
also don't think it's going to show next year. It's
No,
going to be
it'll take a while.
it'll take a while.
Yeah.
I think it's worth putting
And
it out.
one of the things one ways that could take effect is maybe not exactly like this, but when you think about, let's say the Paganini, the 24 etudes.
Yeah.
Okay. When you think about those, you can't play those without good technique. I mean, and it's built in, and you don't have to play those to be a violinist, but it's kind of a threshold that you can't, that if there were pieces of music that made it clear which side you're on, which side of the and I don't mean like the good side or the bad guys side. I mean just like there's a threshold where, okay, you guys are, what you do is cool, but you're not using efficiency. You're not, and up here, there you are. If there's like a liminal point that's for crossing, then it's going to be, then things at least will be clear, right, where you are on that.
Yeah, and I think like I would even go a little further and say that
I'm sure you would.
anything that you can learn by simply spending time, you can do it, but you can also do it very wrong. You can do it very badly while it may still look and sound as if you've accomplished something.
Yeah.
So, and that is kind of like the risk, I think, that a lot of young people are facing here. And like, it's like, well, we both know it, like with force, you can break something. Right? And you only need to put enough force into it. And it's the same with like, you can, and this is where maybe I don't agree with you, because you don't have to have great technique to play the Paganini pieces. You can also play them with shitty technique. You can practice shitty technique for 20 years. It's possible, right? So that's why what I meant as with going further is that, at least again, like at least now from my perspective, like great musicianship nowadays for me is this person capable of creating a composition in the moment. So it has nothing to do with the technique of playing really so much, but with your deep understanding about music as a movement, as actually like a wave that kind of hits us from the back, that comes from the past and extends into the future. It's like how can you ride that wave of knowledge, of everything that has been put into this world sonically? Can you kind of like work with that material? Can you create a piece of music that is sort of like moving in a way, right? So it can be one note. It doesn't have to be, and this one note, it may be a person that has never played a musical instrument, that strikes a gong, let's say, and that gong sound is like the most beautiful sound you've ever heard, right? I think that's really what makes a great musician, is like, can you kind of like tap into this energy? Can you tap into creative creation, let's say? And it has nothing to do with technique, really. But what you were talking about with what you were experiencing there is sort of like the really the opposite of that ability to create, because like you are sort of like going for bad technique without even having any idea what there is. And so this is why maybe for me it's sort of important that if somebody practices one of the exercises I came up with, or that were already there, is to just say, okay, kind of like you need to kind of like at least justify, before yourself, why you practice that. And it's a little bit like going to art school, right? Where like I know some people are making jokes about that, like that you have to kind of like explain why something is good, right? But I think that's exactly the point. Like,
You mean to justify it? Is that what you mean?
To justify it. And like sometimes in modern art museums, you do have a text next to each piece, because it needs to be explained, and some people make fun out of that, but it just simply means they don't understand that contemporary art is more than just craft. So like, for example, like a really amazing piece of work that I saw, like, was by an Austrian artist who became a friend later. He put up the death notice of his father on the wall in a frame, and next to it was the hospital, the invoice from the hospital. It still gives me goosebumps. It was fucking intense, right? Yeah. So, and that's what I mean. Like, I want a musician like that, right? Like that's what music is for me. And you really don't need technique to do that, right? But it also doesn't hurt, obviously.
Yeah, and if you're gonna one of the reasons we need technique is that I think is because you want to sustain it over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And you can't without working on efficiency to a degree, Yeah. I mean, that doesn't make it the virtue, but yeah, it's funny. I often think of this Pablo Casal's quote. He talked about it in terms of tuning, that he tunes his cello off stage, and when you go on stage, you just check it very briefly, very quietly. But it's not. You have to make sure that you do it in a way that the audience is not aware of. The audience isn't concerned about the instrument at all. That's not their concern. Is not the instrument. So that's purely your domain, and it often makes me think of that. That's our side of it, Then there's the other side, how it's experienced, and what the music wants. And obviously, you put your technique at the service of flexibility for the music.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Like last night, for example, I recorded improvisations, like 4 hours of improvisations. Maybe I mentioned this to you, with Sean and with Alex Dowek on touch guitar, and Bernard on keyboards, and so it's a quartet, and I just mixed those improvs. And last night was the first time that I listened to it just as a listener, and was, again, like, I have to say again, I was absolutely blown away by what we did, first of all, and also, and this and I know some people don't understand this, but by what I was playing. Like it's really just so beyond anything that I could ever imagine doing. Like it really, I don't feel identified. I don't identify with that. What comes out when I make music at all. And it's perfect. It's ideal. You know, it's like I can actually enjoy it. I can enjoy it very much. And at the same time, it's sort of like this because it's not that I'm ignorant, you know, I actually know how much work I put into becoming a musician or an improvising musician. But then to see how at some point the stuff that you put in gets out of hand. It sort of like literally gets out of hand. Like you have no idea anymore, like how you did something, and like everything is just pure physical expression. Like there is no more decision, like conscious decision involved when I'm improvising with people. But then listening back, I can hear that there's clearly a lot of structure that sort of kind of like appears out of nowhere. And I just, you know, to me that's just like most satisfying to see that we can do that as human beings. And I guess it's probably very similar to like even like, well, most, you know, very much so in martial arts for sure, I think, but even in more mundane forms of sports, right? Like here in Germany, like the soccer in Germany, for example, which is sort of some form of art that is so advanced that you don't see it anymore, that it's art. And
yeah, you can't. I can't believe that the physical responses that are required are faster than anything you could think up or calculate.
Yes.
At that high level. Yeah, which is in a way similar. They've embodied, you know, they practice the fuck out of what they're doing, and then they're embodying the aims of the game, and then the game just takes over, right? And they just respond.
Yeah, and here it just to come back to something we talked about before, I think like the line starts to blur somehow between, I'm going to say it because between reality and dream somehow. Because as you say, like maybe even like the response is kind of almost preceding the stimulus, right? And yeah, I find it totally fascinating, and it kind of, yeah, the concept of flow, you heard about that, right? Like the which sort of says that if I remember correctly, I've learned that like 30 years ago, but that you have to be like familiar enough with something, but not too familiar. And that's where you can experience flow, because it's both slightly challenging, but at the same time you're up to the challenge. And so if we take that as sort of like a truth, a little bit of a truth, and then you start moving your skill level around, and obviously this bubble starts moving, right? And I guess that's what I'm fascinated with this sort of moving that bubble to an extreme.
And Sean's a great test case isn't the right word, but I was just thinking it's what's interesting is that you could move into that state on an instrument that you don't play. I mean, you would still bring all your musical experience, but you would, let's say, not have much facility on whatever it is, but it doesn't matter. because, you know, and that's what I find fascinating about Sean, is that he's got obviously a big musical life, and he's just taking what he can do technically, you know.
What I love about Sean also is that he really doesn't really know how good he really is.
Mm. Mm.
Like because, and I think that may be a generational thing. Like he's 32, I think, or 33 maybe. So he's very much I don't have the word for this, matter of fact, I guess. What I'm trying to say, very matter of fact about what he's doing. Like very little about. He's not talking about what he does as an art form, right? But then, like when we went into the studio and we did the set improvisations, and if you would hear it, you would kind of like, you would be surprised even. Like you wouldn't, just what he shows of himself online is that matter of fact kind of like person. And but in this session playing with us, it was really very much as if he had been unleashed in some sort of interesting way, in sort of like a spiritually unleashed somehow. And like and now, like also like coming back to like how things are nowadays with you, as you say, like there are no secrets anymore because they are just out there and you can just find any bit of information that you want. The question really is that true? So, or what remains? Like what are today's secrets?
Well, that's definitely, and I it's funny, I run into this in the jujitsu world as well. Or I sense it because I'm a musician. I can sense it in the jujitsu world that there's that there's all the technique, and you practice the fuck out of it. In jujitsu, you practice the fuck out of it, and the high level guys, they're super technical. Like you can't fake it like you can as a musician, really. But even still, there's a little magic factor, and it's something about like having the technique and this something else, and those guys know it. That the top guys, to me it's rare for one of the top guys not to, you can get, it's so hot, it's so far away to get at top level, but then there's like the magic up there too. And it doesn't mean the magic can't be down here, but there's a little alchemy that happens. And I mean, how do you explain that? It's like, and especially as musicians, it's even more, there's more alchemy because it's not about the technique anyway at the end of the day.
It's funny. It's really funny that you mentioned this because I've had like sort of like this, not for myself, but when I talk to others about art, I've had this sandwich kind of model where it's say like there's like a layer at the bottom, which is sort of the hobbyists or like the guys making music in their basement, right? And they have no contact with the outside world. Then you have sort of like a thick layer in the middle, and this is everybody who is kind of on the grind, like and in all sorts of different ways. And so there may be people that actually are quite good at what they do, but it's like you also have like all sorts of different motivations in this layer. And then when you get to the what I call the God layer or the God artist, right? These are people who are just kind of like beyond anybody else here, you should think, but I'm going to tell you more about that. But at least they are totally beyond the middle of things, right? And they sort of are the people or the beings that sort of like create the as you say, the magic. So that means like the magic trickles down from below to everybody else. And this is why these others are actually in it, because we have the god artists in the top layer, right? So now I think that the skill level and like all of these things that may be required and the dedication, a commitment that may be required to be on that level, right? You can also find it on the hobbyist level, I believe. I believe it's also down there, but it's this layer in the middle where people are lost, where people are lost.
Yeah,
I have to say it that way, right? Where sort of like it's just, I've never come in such a situation, but I know that there's a lot of people that have to write in order to, well, how do you call it, like a application to get a grant, for example, and then you get the grant, and that means that what you had offered has to be like what you said it would be, right? So you kind of like have to make a work that then is about a hot topic, like immigrants or something, which is sort of like here in Germany, it's like if you make a project, it has to include immigrants, and it's fine. Like I have but it's not for me, because then maybe I would decide, okay, no, but I need to work with old people, and it can't be about immigrants. Right. So, but you can't do that because you have to send them. You have to send them a report.
You've already agreed.
Yes. So, and this is sort of like the situation you get into when you're in that middle layer. And once you've gotten into that, I'd say it's almost impossible to get out of it. So, and just because you were talking about that magic level in jiu-jitsu, I really think it's this model sort of like applies. Maybe to most professions or interests that people have, that there's this.
Definitely when there's, real craftsmanship. And, both of these practices we're talking about, they're physical, emotional, and intellectual. They're all, it's all of it, and so that might also be a factor, Yeah, I like to use the word amateur, which is we've taken it as a derogatory term. Hobby, you could use them both, but amateurs, that they just love doing it, and that there's a virtue of that beyond the middle journeyman kind of. There's a virtue of that, and that's how for me, that's what jiu-jitsu is. That's how I look at it. I love it. And actually, because of that, I feel like I can gain access to some of the higher stuff, even though I don't have the technique for it, And the other thing that's really, I think what's really interesting, what you say, and it's so true in both the practices, is that those guys in the upper room up there, they're bringing food for everybody else. If you can tap into it. In fact, we were talking about that with my jiu-jitsu buddy last week, that when you are working with somebody who's way better than you play better. You play better jiu-jitsu and you play better music. You just do. It's a little bit like, I like to think of it like when you play, I don't know if you've ever played, or if you play ping pong at all. I haven't played in years, but the thing about ping pong is that you don't really want to play with somebody who you're way better than, or somebody who's way better than you. It's not a fun game. You want somebody, ideally, you want somebody who's about your level, but a bit better than you, so that you can be challenged and be pulled forward. And it's kind of this sense of the transmission is I think it's really real, and that's kind of I suppose it's kind of psychologically how I survive. And you must have it must be similar for you. Like, okay, I've made this crazy thing. Most people are going to hate it, but I feel like I just have to go out there and explore that part, because I don't know, it brings something from out there in, and whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And I may not ever listen to it again, but at least we're trying to bring something from outer space into the dirt here.
Yeah, it's one pretty early on. I kind of like decided, or I was aware that what I was doing was niche, right? So, but anyway, like I did it. I loved doing it, and then I started to package it as if it's a commercial product. And I think that in a way that was a really good move, but it also was also a very bad move, because what happened was that people sort of like the packaging was, and with packaging I mean like not just the literally like everything, sort of like the way
The frame
the frame of the whole thing was looking too, it was looking too good and too comfortable and too big. People, so people kind of like were confused about the state. You know, like I remember that somebody was visiting me and thought I was 50 years old rather than 22 at that point, because just of the way that I was talking, I was writing, or I was, you know, it was back in 94 or something, right? So it was really, really interesting. I think that happened also to how I presented my music, that it was just it was just so well made that people thought that I must have sold, I don't know, 100,000 copies, but it was actually 100.
Right,
you know?
right.
And
did that influence how they? I mean, that must influence how they approached it, just as a piece, right? As well,
I think so. Yes.
how they listened and
Yeah. I think so. So like, you know, I partnered up with the designer very early on in my career to do things at least properly back then. I mean, it's you know, the first few things weren't great, but then it's sort of like at least for 20 years, it's always been presented like a professional product, even though it was, for a long time, it was amateur. As not the content, but you know, the motivation. It was never a commercial product, but it looked like a commercial product.
Right.
And that sort of has created quite a bit of misunderstandings over the years.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever talked about with anybody about this. So yeah.
I mean, you want to. It's funny. You make me think of this idea. There's a like a purely business idea that if you have a Chinese restaurant, it needs to look like a Chinese restaurant from the outside. Otherwise, people won't come in, because when they want Chinese food, they want to know that they're going to get Chinese food. And if it looks a little like it's not going to be Chinese food, then they don't really know what to do. It's not a good business strategy, basically, you know. And that's almost what you're saying, right? Am I?
Yeah, you know, like you made me think and chuckle about something like, so in the like kebab places here, like where you know, like Turkish or Arabic kind of places, and so in German, with everything means mit allem. Mit allem. So allem with M at the end, but everything is alles. So what a lot of people say that don't speak German probably say mit alles. So wrong. So but it should be mit allem. So now the funny thing is like because like some some people, they say, even though they know that it should be mit allem, they ask you mit alles. So they say it the wrong way in order to keep up that you have the feeling that you're actually buying it from somebody who is real.
Oh,
like
I see.
so they use wrong German so that you as a customer
Feel like
have the experience of buying it from a real guy.
That's hilarious.
It is really amazing. It's like buying Mexican food from a place where they don't have a Mexican dialect.
Yeah,
right?
or even worse, like here in Seattle, and I get used to it here, but I can't think of an example. But if you went to a Thai restaurant and all the waiters are young white guys, it feels weird. Like you don't really trust that you don't feel safe. You don't feel safe that you're going to get good Thai food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or sushi, I mean, sure, there's prejudice involved, but it's also and conditioning, but it's also the frame. It's the frame.
So with the local guy here, so he says mit allem, so he says it the right way, and then I respond yes mit alles. So we're making fun of that.
So he knows.
He knows, of course.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And in a way, like we do have stuff like that in music as well, right? If you think about it, like these like I'm hardly ever in a situation like that where I have to play a cliche or anything, and I probably even couldn't play that, right?
Right.
But a lot of people do though, right? Like if you learn blues guitar, for example.
Yeah, and also just presentation, right? I mean, I have some friends down in Austin, not Pat, and they're more in the blues vein, and um, you can't you can't really dress the way you and I are on stage.
Mhm.
Not really, you know. I mean, I could and you could. We don't give a shit. But to you want to give. It's a funny thing when you want to give people what they're expecting, and of course you and I play against that, and as well. But probably sometimes to our own detriment,
Yeah.
like not being aware of what's being expected, is a mistake. I think it's a big mistake, and then okay, if you want to play with it, sure. But if you're just oblivious, well, I mean, you can see musicians when they do that, whatever they're trying to do. Here's not a crazy example, but they're trying to do something really serious. Maybe it's in the prog vein, but it's like complex or whatever. And they're wearing blue jeans and like shitty shoes on stage. As soon as you see them, you feel like there's a mismatch here. It's not like it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like it really matters, because if they play well, but somehow it's just like somebody used the wrong spice in the Thai food. Just a little, like, there's not supposed to be blueberries in this. That's like, you know, don't wreck it. Don't wreck it. You're so close.
I guess there's a little bit of like a balance there that's needed, right? So I guess it's good if you can be yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also ideally, like the audience wants you, right? So not how you dress, or right, or not if you're bald or if you have a big belly or not. That shouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
But then it does,
Yeah.
for some reason. Like, but I don't think it should uh, be the only thing to concern yourself about as an artist, as a musician.
No, no. And I think some people, if you're really going for authenticity, if that's really your aim, I feel like maybe I'm just trying to be idealistic about this, but I feel like a lot of people end up with all of that stuff done properly anyway. If they're really being themselves and really aware. It's funny, your thing about being bald or whatever. It's not directly connected, but I do remember how absolutely silly I thought it was. And if I was a younger musician, I might be afraid that this would cost me a potential gig. But I remember I went to go see Robert open for G3 with, it wasn't Eric Johnson, it was Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Satriani and Steve Vai. And fucking Steve Vai had a fan on stage to blow his hair. And he changed his clothes in the middle of the set. And I was like, holy shit, man, you're such a great musician. What the fuck are you doing? You don't need that shit. In fact, I mean, maybe it does sell more tickets. Maybe it does make you more money. I would hope not, but to me, it's just like, just play, man. Just play. Fuck the fan. Change your clothes. Who changes their clothes in a show except for Liberace? Although, you know what? We should do that in our next. We should do that in our next show. We should have a little thing where there's enough sound going on, and one of the guys leaves the stage while the other guy's playing, and he comes back with something totally different on, and then you leave and come back with something totally different on. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I also I think it's about balance somehow. Again, like what is the purpose of it? And we're sort of like circling back a little bit, and I'm just going to say this. So Anthony Garone, who wrote the book, you know, and he's also been associated with Vi because he was his intern. I'm not sure if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so they are still friends, and they also like Anthony has interviews with Vi on his website and stuff. But but from conversations with Anthony, I've heard that Steve Vai really actually has a very bad technique.
Oh, interesting.
So he's in the sense that he's hurting himself.
Oh yeah.
So not that he has. I mean, like it's amazing, like incredible. Like, there was this tapping piece he just did. It's unbelievable, right? But
and you saw the bending thing.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. So, but anyway, like the point is that he's paying a price for playing like that, right? So that's what I mean. That's sort of like where maybe the balance needs to come in on that level with the technique, but then also with the presentation, right? Where, and it would be interesting to talk to ask Steve this question, right? Like what?
Well, and I bet he's. My guess is he's probably over that now. Like it's probably part of the process of like having to deal with. He lives in LA, I assume, and having to deal with wanting to get to a certain level of fame and what's involved with that. And I would totally get it wrong myself. I guarantee I would get it wrong if I was at that level for a while. But you would hope that you would go through that.
But you know, maybe he simply also enjoys
exactly
theater, let's say, right?
Yeah.
So why not? You know, I mean, and then there's no problem. Like just because I can't imagine doing that doesn't mean that it's somebody else can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and with the on the Devin Townsend tour, we actually had like Hawaii shirts on for the first 3-4 songs, and then we changed to black, and we changed back to the Hawaii shirt at the end of the show.
Right.
And that was already pretty stressful to tell you. Just this one, they're just taking the shirt off and putting a new one on. But it worked.
But you know, I can totally picture how if it's really integrated into the performance, and it could have a really powerful effect.
It was like the whole tour with Devin was all about emotions, right? And just the fact that the show started, I don't know if you know anything about this, but it was started with like 5 minutes of getting cocktails at the bar. And the bar was the keyboards. The keyboard player actually made cocktails for everyone in the band.
On the stage.
On the stage.
I've always wanted to do that.
That's how the show started. It was incredible. It's incredible. Like that set the mood for the night, right? Nice. And like we all go on a vacation together, and then the first song starts, and it was awesome.
Nice. I always wanted to make martinis on stage.
And it, you know, the cocktails, they were real.
I bet they were. They were. Oh, that's great. That's great.
So yeah.
All right then.
How did we get here? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so next week.
Probably. Yeah, let's do next week. I have a wild card to throw at you next week. So.
Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye
Cool.
for now.
Bye-bye for now.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend. And,
You too. Tell everyone I said hi.
I will if I see anyone.
Yes.
All right.
Bye. Bye.
Cheers, Marcus.